and it's showing at the Portico Library in Manchester. So we're anticipating being together for maybe an hour, and we're inviting questions to come via the chat in the first instance, and if appropriate, we can bring people on. So I just would like to say that I'm very mindful that we're all coming from different places, as the chat mentioned, which was great to see everybody saying where they're coming from. And I acknowledge the elders, past, present and emerging, who are the traditional owners and custodians of Anangu country, where Rene and Linda and Angela are standing now, where our guests are from, and Larrakia country, where I'm sitting in Darwin. And we're with people in Manchester and so many other parts of Britain and France. And so we are entwined in a way. We are all together now. We're entwined as an irrevocable consequence of James Cook's voyage to Australia in 1770. And so that is the motivating idea behind the exhibition. And I'll just hand over to James to talk about the library, which is where it's situated.
And shall we, before that, would you like to just say hello, Rene, to the group as well?
Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Everyone good?
So we're extremely lucky to have Rene be able to join us today from Australia, and with the extra restrictions everybody faces all around the world at the moment, it's really amazing that we've got this. And incidentally, Helen is in a quarantine centre, having just flown out to Australia as well, but very many hundreds of miles away from Rene there. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen just to show a few images of the library in the context of this exhibition. And Rene has also asked us to show an image of Captain Cook, which is from one of the books that the library holds as well. So I'm going to share that now. Can everybody see some of that? So I hope you can see the books there in the Portico Library in Manchester. Portico Library was established during the Georgian period, the same period in which the voyage took place, during which British people first set foot on the land of Australia. And currently today we now have exhibitions that interrogate the 19th century collection and contextualize the history of the library for people today. So you can see here Rene's artwork in our current exhibition within the library. And here it is now. We've been very lucky that we've been able to reopen the library during this time so people can come in and experience the work. And our work is, Rene's work is shown with a video of her expanding on the photograph with a performance where she discusses the meaning, which she'll talk about later. And you can see that video on the website. So if you go onto the library's website, you can look at the exhibition and the video is embedded there. So this is also one of the exhibits, and this is a map showing the hundreds of different language and cultural areas of Australia. This was produced by IATSIS, the Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies. And I'm going to zoom in. This is where Rene is, Pitjantjatjara country. I can zoom out again. And the performance here, which you can see on the website as well. And this is the artwork we're going to be discussing today, in English, called When the Blanket Came. And here is Cook, which we'll come back to, and the artwork in the library itself. So Helen, would you like to say something? So I'll stop sharing the screen now, sorry, and then we'll come back.
So I think it's very important for us to, I'll introduce you to Rene Kulitja in the first instance. Rene grew up in APY lands in the north of South Australia before moving to Docker River and Mutitjulu. Rene is an established artist. She's a community activist and advocate and sits on a number of boards. She's the director of the NPY Women's Council, a member of the Mutitjulu Community Council, a traditional owner and board member of the Uluru-Kata National Park Board of Joint Management. Rene was also founding director of Ngaanyatjarra Art and the current director of Maruku Arts. Rene represented the Jampi Desert Weavers for Australia in the Venice Biennale in 2015 and designed the Yankunytjatjara Dreaming for the aeroplane, the Boeing 737, which was flying domestically probably until the pandemic. And in 2019, Rene visited London with Angela Lynch and Patanji Lewis, and they came to King's College London and shared with us their practices as Nankarai, or traditional healers, in workshops to share their practice and their experience. Angela, who's behind the scenes there, is the program manager for the Nankarai project at the NPY Women's Council. And we also welcome Linda Reeve, who's the translator and whose Manchester connections go back to the 1500s. And she noted to me that L.S. Lowry was her family tax collector. So she has this big connection. So we would like to talk about, because we wanted to not talk about Cook, but we're talking about Cook, we were invited, given the opportunity to have the photograph that Rene has made with Rhett Hamilton in collaboration. And the photograph comes out of the work that you would see where Rene performs the meaning of the blanket in the video. So I wondered, Rene, if you could say a little bit about what motivated you to make this work.
The blanket one?
Yeah, the blanket one.
Okay, so
ngana la uyanga jamu nya kami nya jana nyinangi ora wajanga fruitinga wali kawiya kapi chukulanga munokula da mero jara wana peti jara.
So my mind is cast back to the past, long before I was born, when my grandparents and great-grandparents were living naked and roaming hunter-gatherers in the Central Australian bush. And they walked across their country, they drank water from their own water holes, fresh water, and they used spears and spear throwers for hunting meat and wooden bowls and digging sticks for digging and foraging food.
Kanyara parulada parujana anamba mama onjo kanino kajana waparji pulkaringula ngana nyanda kanino kala eredi nyinangi anablala michiniringa kuwari pajar mulapa.
And those ancient people birthed my grandparents, and my grandparents birthed my parents, and my parents birthed me and us, my generation. And we were handed down everything from the past. So growing up, I grew up in a missionary life at Ernabella Mission in South Australia. And this is what I was taught that came down through the ages.
Walau nanti wia la ngorpa nyenangi menula nanti ringangi cukup banyak well wenki kola nanti wia paindra kolenja wia la manda koju bejuda banyak alam orang ka koju watar ko nyenangi menula kolang ka nanti ringangi.
And we, in those days in Ernabella Mission, we had no concept whatsoever of the wider world, of the size of the world, of what happened in world affairs and world history before us. We just didn't know because we were first contact people. And so we were learning what school was all about for the first ever time. And so he really didn't have any idea of anything that was beyond our lands and our reality.
Manula kuleningi jamunya kaminya undar ngakacanya jana penyawanka jana wanka wajangku ingili jangku wanka jawiya.
And we conversed in our own language. Our grandparents and our great-grandparents only spoke their own language and dialect and their own sort of specialized dialects. And that's the language that we grew up in. We didn't know anything else.
Manula kula bala nyinara pulkaring kula nintiringo mula kuliningi muntawa inkili ja tuda ngani tu mnora kojo papara reja rolonga mungara ngani kangala nyara bala da pulkaring kula nintiringo la kuliningi kojo bijuda.
And so it was really school that awakened us school children to an awareness of what was beyond our own existence. So what was happening globally, and the fact that other countries existed, other peoples existed. And we learnt about those for the first time, plus the usage of English and the English concepts. We were learning those words and concepts for the first ever time.
Manula kulinolda wari banyak Captain Cook nga palo pitjangu London dawolo.
Oh, and we wondered how all those external forces came to us, and we looked back in time and we understood that a man called Captain Cook had sailed from London, from England, and had brought a huge amount with him, or it came as a result of him, came to us.
Kamula ba Australia la buerga palo buerga flag jono manda bala buergan.
Captain Cook also brought his own flag, a symbol of his own country, and planted it upon our land and claimed our land under the name of his own flag.
Kala bala panyangan na nentering orta kuare mula pulka juda da kole munta wa panyere di Captain Cook kapijang.
So for us, it was a huge revelation to discover that nearly everything about colonization stemmed from the arrival of one man, and all of the influences that came following that arrival. It was a revelation to us.
Ka pulka mula ba ngana pangarani ngana na banya eri di jamula kamila jana langoro banya wangka kana pa Pitjantjatjara ala di dong ngalangi eri di ngoro ingkili jawiya.
And having said all that history, our history was right there, and we were living a continuum of our own history embodied in our own language being Pitjantjatjara, and which is a dialect, also including Yankunytjatjara, Ngaanyatjarra, their dialects, and those are the languages that our family have spoken for hundreds of years.
Karena kujo bejuda, cungureng kulang Allah Australia la wajar bidini nangi, wilulara, alincara, kakarara, urparera, wenki, wangka kujo ba wajang wangkara waningi.
And we are Central Australian people, but Australia is a very big country, and there are Aboriginal people living on every square inch of Australia, in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west, and they all have their own languages and dialects, and the whole of the land is covered in different languages and dialects, and people's own country.
Kapalum bejana ba kuari benya, palu jana kaminya jamunya jana. Kulpalanga ngonchonya jana eri di nyinanja ngura balu ngara nyana itu kuare kala kuare ngura balu jana jangan na adus mana menuan kula nyangani.
Our family, our extended family members have never left their own country. They are living on our own country still to this day, and maintaining and holding and keeping and looking after the land and the culture and the sites that we inherited on our own land.
Banyak parula wananya Pulangkita bicara Pulangkita Pulangkita jodoh kalau protokol ini banyak ingkili Pulangkita.
And our experience has been, with this arrival of all of these influences, it also included things like blankets, which we'd never seen before. And so, blankets are used for covering over. And so I'm using that metaphor to say that the blanket has blanketed our own language and covered our own language over completely, and sort of hidden it underneath the blanket. So we got no room to move.
Wakala ngala kulini mula pulka mula banyak ingkili pulka kawang kanganam pa Pitjantjatjara Yankunytjatjara Ngaanyatjarra pulka to.
Well, but we appreciate the importance of the English language and its usefulness, but it has sort of covered over and repressed the usage of our own language, and our own language describes our heritage and culture, but English completely dominates our own language.
Yarjerji London tangro Captain Cook Pitjangu banyak London ngura para remula.
And it amazes us, and it amazes me, how one man can be a symbol of so much that has come from one place, London, England, and brought so much to us. It has affected us so much here. from all that way.
Palula la nendiringula kolino muntawa. Captain Cook Kapanyeri di Pitjangu. Anampa. Mantagoto. Australia lagoto. Kala kolino muntawa. Palu brunch but Panaturo Tjuta takwari. Pitjantjatjara. London ora winking or palu brunch.
So we realize that he kind of spearheaded a great flood of visitors from overseas, and particularly England, including London, visiting and coming to Australia, tourists, travelers, people coming from lots of other countries, including London, England, have come pouring into our land.
Heritage. Museum nga Captain Cook lo karera junangi. Wanampa walchapidingo Pitjantjatjara.
And Captain Cook and people like him, we now know, has taken cultural artifacts from our land, from all over Australia. And now we know if we go to a museum, we're likely to find cultural artifacts and things of great value in museums all over the world.
Kuari new wearing malaja juda ko anam panya kuari Australia la ana juda anam poalcha juda ko juda ko painting wido balane anam pangora jara ka tro juda bijana mancha karini ka pokol bagwari ngani. Ana juda.
Yeah, so we're obviously we have to make the best of this situation that we find ourselves, and so we've found the arts to be a great tool for us, and many Aboriginal people are amazing artists, and so we do paintings which depict our country as teaching tools, and we sell them to people, and people purchase them from us, and take our story and knowledge of our land all over Australia. But that's a transaction that we're happy about, and gives us the world of art to transact in and trade in. But it's an educational sharing on our terms. Wow. And so it's very important to us to use everything we can as educational tools for young people, but also create artworks of beauty and education, and use those as to spread the message of our own empowerment and what we have on our terms.
Tjuta ko banya cici malaja ko carpara nyangani library no museum nga cici Tjuta carpara no nendiri ngani nyakola pian ba ko no anang.
And we really appreciate the role of museums and libraries to be educational and to teach young people the realities of history and the facts all over the world. And our young people particularly can benefit but from libraries and from museums as educational places to teach young people about the truth of history and our cultural heritage. We as Arnango people We hold our cultural heritage in our spirits as a spiritual thing, but also in our heads and minds as an intellectual thing. So we hold our cultural heritage absolutely, completely bodily.
Panyanganam bekaming ko camu ko ngano nanya nganam buan digaringo ngano na kanyin japo kal konjong ko kanyin mamang ko kanyin ka kuare ngano na danyina nyanga nganam bejuda hoyaring ka ngano na da last one nyina nganam chichi manen dinjija.
So you know, I know, and people of my generation, we have received knowledge and education and law and culture from our great-grandparents, which have been handed down to our grandparents and then our parents. And our parents did the right thing. They educated us and they taught us everything they knew, which was the right thing to do, to continue that law and culture, passing it on down through the generations, which has been happening for a really long time. And now here we are. Now we are the inheritors of this ancient traditional culture, and it is now our job to educate the next generation down.
Priyan baguanang ko chong ko makanya ni manuman nentiring ko la cukur buan kara palyal kara ni koranyo korong ko cicingana bajudak.
And I guess we've got great benefits in that today we are now utilizing tools and artifacts and objects from the modern life. So we are using white people's cultural things as well as our own to use as teaching tools for younger people, to engage younger people. We'll use any kind of tool that would teach and educate.
Kajingro Korea Nyaja Anam Bangarani Pulka Kulitja Pulka Kulitja 2020 Pulka Kulitja Banyanam Pa Fuchago Chichi Juda Malaja Malaj Pulka Kulitja Gananadu Manguja Jongoringula Ganana Ngaparji Alpamra Oranyo Adinjab.
Oh, wow. And so now here we find ourselves in 2020, all those years later, and we appreciate everything that we have in our lives now. There are so many different ways and forums that we can use, different media that we can use to our benefit, to benefit the generations to come in the future, because they're going to learn in a different way to the way our grandparents learned. And we were very lucky in a way that we do have these other tools of education to continue that heritage and that passing on of our cultural law.
What's that one? What does it say?
So now I'm holding something that's now been created by the men of our group. I just push it forward.
Push it forward. Ah, yes. Chanjamaku. Yeah. So is this a learning, a teaching tool?
A teaching tool. Oh, yes, this is a teaching tool.
Cukur banyak aja, cani makot, cukur bawa di judaku panjang. Yang bala judaku, ini daerah judaku.
So this is about, it's called Jani Mako Jugurba, the story of how one young man came good from a problem, And this is what the men have written. We've just launched this book yesterday, and this is what the men have written about a young man's life path.
Congratulations for the publication. Yeah.
Great. And we've got another one we're going to show you. They can see it. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is called Julpo and Walpa, and the women wrote this before. We wrote this one first. This is about a young girl's life path and about the possibility of how a girl can, how her life can go in one direction or the other. And this is an educational tool to choose the right path. And so these, both of these books are about the men and the women working together to form. Instead of everyone being individual, we formed consensus on how the story should be, and the men wrote this one, the women wrote this one, about people's lives, about parenting, good parenting, and life possibilities. But it's one. We all agreed that this was how we would present it.
Could I ask a question about, I think it's the way you describe that you're using the technologies that are available to express your cultures. And we can see in the video that you allowed us to show where you demonstrate the blanket coming, and you use the video, and that's a really good example, like the books are a good example of the same thing. And I wanted to let you know, I think James has a photograph to show of some children visiting the library, and they're sitting, looking at your photograph and looking at the video. And so I think your technology has allowed you to share your story all the way to Manchester. And the children were looking, you can see here the children have come to the library and are watching the film. So you're educating your people, but you're also educating the people in Manchester in the library. And it made me think of what you say in your video, which is you're asking us all to think carefully about the stories and about your stories.
This seeing this photograph makes me feel really happy, because this is exactly what we were after, because we want to teach all children so that all children know the truth of history and how things happened, like what happened. So it's not just our own kids, but kids globally. Everyone needs to know global history and its patterns and effects.
Well, Pat, who's on the call with us, she is the curator as well, and she took the photograph and told us that the children were really learning something about Australia. I think they knew about Captain Cook, but they didn't know anything else. So it's been a very powerful very powerful.
Walarajana Captain Cook Kuju.
So James, perhaps you could show us the photograph of Captain Cook, because in our in the Portico Library they have the a first edition of Hawkesworth's recording of Captain Cook's voyage to Australia in 1770. And I first met Rene when she was visiting London, as I said, and we were walking just near the National Gallery at Admiralty Arch, and we came around the corner and there was Captain Cook. And I wondered if you could say something about your voyage, your visit to London.
London Ngaanyatjarra.
Wangayulo kuwari ko joanno London go banyangora parare mulapa. Manuna palla ngo pulkara pukulare ngo. Ora palla wer kara manuna pulkara kone ningi banya. Captain Cook ko chokur beere dija.
So I visited London last year for the first time, like it was the first time I'd ever been in England, and it's a really long way away from here. And for me, it was a really fantastic experience because all my life I've been experiencing so much that has emanated out of England and London and come to me. But this was my first experience to go to the source of all of these influences that have come to me. So it was amazing to go to England and to London and to see that statue of Captain Cook. We visited a lot of places in London, a lot of very important historical places. And we were able to appreciate how long white people have been living in London, a long time. Yeah, and you know, it was hard and still is hard for us to comprehend the age of a place like London and England. I mean, the history goes back a really, really long way. But it was fantastic for us to also, because we'd heard about Captain Cook. We knew about Captain Cook a little bit, and we learnt so much more about all the places that he'd travelled to in his life. He's a well-travelled man. Yeah, and all of the histories that have been written since his visit, everything that was written, all the documentation, all the objects and artifacts, and everything that ended up in museums and art galleries and libraries all around the world and also in London, really found that absolutely amazing to learn about. And we also appreciated the great age of these institutions and how they have remained unchanged for so very long, and how people of the past visited these buildings and these institutions and how they looked exactly the same then as what they do now, and they've remained unchanging and unchanged, and objects that, you know, living objects that were taken and put into all of these places, how they are still there in the same position, and how people have been visiting these places for so very, very, very long and will continue to. So we found that kind of age and timeline, found that really quite amazing, really.
Some of those, excuse me, some of the objects that are in the museums, like in Manchester Museum, the people have had them, they've come home, they've brought them home back to Aboriginal country. So there is quite a bit of work to do with IATSIS to repatriate the objects and bring them home.
Yeah, or all about more Kujipajota Museum, Kujipajota Parojan and Marla Kongo Mani. Arnangobanya Irituta or overseas more, yeah, Jana Marla Kongo Mani, IATSIS, Canberra, Parojana. Yeah. Yes, we are aware of the process. We've been involved in the process of repatriating certain objects that have come back to us. Yeah, we know about that. Yeah, okay. That's good. Okay.
Oh, very good. Juda. We are Juda Nindiring Kugarin. New Zealand, Nganyakula, Chokorba Golila, Nindiring and Pulkaring Kulajana, Nindi Mulara, Nindiring.
Oh, but so we see the role of museums and libraries as being very crucial to children and young people all around the world in explaining cultural history and heritage as it properly is, and getting kids to understand how things happened in the past and how things got there, and how some objects are being repatriated. It's very good for kids to have a real contemporary knowledge of the workings of these big institutions like libraries and museums. They're great places for fantastic opportunities for education.
Yeah. And perhaps this might be the time to speak of your work and involvement with the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
Uluru, yep.
Yeah. James, can you show the painting? Is that okay? And then we must be. So.
Jana joren kula kulening yarja kula palyal kumla chokor ba statement na wano gochoneng chokor ba anam ba palyal kulinja anam kulinja manda manjinja eredi.
So this work of art came about after a long series of discussions with the old people and us. You know, we are the people who are responsible today for handing down traditional knowledge and culture. And so we had a long discussions about consensus, about what exactly it is that we want to say, and how we're going to put it, like how we're going to actually put it. So that, and this is what we ended up with, this work of art, which is a consensus artwork from a lot of people. And so these paintings, these images represent a consensual agreement amongst traditional owners today about a concentration about what it is they want to hand down to young people of the future. And it's like a promise or a gift or a bequest. And so these are the big Jogurba stories that are going to be handed down to future generations. And there they are, they're depicted there.
Jamulo Camilo, Jamulo Golpalo, Mamalo, Jana, Joringola, Wanka, Cocho, Wankara, Colera, Manda Mantino, Chichi Malaja Malaja.
Because our own great-grandparents and grandparents and uncles and aunties and mothers and fathers, they were the ones that were involved in the original fight for land rights, which we won. We won our own land rights. And we today are the inheritors of all of that hard work. And now it's our job to capture our lives today and pick it up and teach the young people about what they've inherited, what they will inherit, and what they need to carry forward into the future.
Cicingana bajudango pulkaringola parojana chokorba wetil kudo monokanyir.
This is so different to how our cultural heritage has been handed down through untold eons to us, because it's been handed down through the spirit and the soul and the love and the mind and the feeling and spoken words. And now here is something quite different, but saying what we've inherited, putting it into an artwork.
For people who are listening who may not know about excuse me, the Uluru Statement from the Heart, it was it's a statement that's been made in English to the nation of Australia, asking or offering a chance for Australia to make a reconciliation with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, to make a voice to Parliament, to make a treaty, and to do a truth-telling, a makarata. And there's been a tradition, I suppose we call it a tradition of people making making artworks that tell the story as Rene has just explained, and then you would have the English statement in the middle that is for, and then you present it to, so everybody in Australia can read it and understand it and be educated about a way forward together. And this work is carried around to different groups of people to explain how we can move forward. And the signatures all around the edge, where I think Rene's got her signature on there as well, are all the people that came, all the elders that gathered in Uluru to make this statement and this education for us all. Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's any questions. James, have we got?
Questions, 22 people. There's 22 people.
Let's see. So people can ask questions in the chat box. I don't think there are any questions yet that I can see, but if anybody would like to ask a question, they can put the question into the chat box or just raise their hand and I can turn your microphone on.
Oh, someone's asked a question. Catriona Jarvis.
I'm just trying to. It's not letting me click on Catriona. Oh, here we go. There we go. Catriona, I think you should be able to speak now.
I've unmuted, and I'm also with my partner, Sid, and he would like to speak, please. Thank you, first of all. Can I say thank you very much, Rene? That was an incredibly illuminating and moving introduction to your work that you've just given us. Thank you. And here's Sid.
Yes, thank you. And it's very nice to see you, Helen, albeit at some distance through a glass darkly. But as you know, we were lucky enough to visit Uluru and Alice Springs last year, in part with the work that we do on migration and refugees. But that was part of our personal visit rather than work. However, we did go to the community centre at Uluru with the art project, and we're really, really lucky to be able to buy a painting by Nellie Patterson. I'm sure Rene knows very, very well. And it's a picture I don't know whether we can show you because it's actually hanging on our wall in London, and we're in France, locked down at the moment. But I have a picture on my phone, and it's the I'll show you afterwards. But I really wanted to know a little bit more about, because one of the things we understood of Nellie's role is that she is the most senior woman lawgiver in Australia. And I'd just really like to know a little bit more about what that role is, and how that function still works in the community and has influence on issues like the statement from the heart.
Mrs. P.
Mrs. P.
So we call her Mrs. P. She's my mother. She's like my mother, my mother's side. And yeah, she's a very senior woman, and she's very, very knowledgeable.
Wain majuda, paluin kape, kemeni cici juda ko, nentering ko jako, kala chongoring ko la, palu lawan, ngano na nentering ko be, palu bejawan.
And so she and I are two of the women that we do a lot of education of traditional singing and dancing with the children in our community. And Mrs. P sings and teaches about the song, and her knowledge that she imparts comes from her mouth and from her life experience and from her knowledge, which is incredibly valuable and very deep.
Thank you.
And that's true. She's yeah. And she's a wonderful woman, and she's a very happy, bubbly person. Yeah, Mrs. B. Even though she's yeah, sort of in a wheelchair. We could actually show, yeah, you could actually show that. Can you see Mrs. P?
Yes, yes.
Oh, fantastic.
We can. And
just a second, they've gone.
If you can still hear us, the name of the painting is, it's a painting of the dark emu.
The dark emu. Can you hear us?
Dark emu.
Yes, we
yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah. And it was bought for me because I am a lawyer, and Sid bought the painting for me from one lawgiver to another. It's very special to me.
Law and law, like lawyer and lawyer. Yeah, well, you've got something special there, I can tell you.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see our screen.
No, we can't see.
No, we
No,
can't see us.
okay,
Never mind.
okay.
We can send it to Helen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send it. Send it to me.
But just to continue a little bit, if I may, presumably the role of lawgiver is still a very, very important role in pursuing the rights of people in Australia, amongst her many other talents. I wondered just how her role fitted into the wider political situation.
Min majuda. Ya min majuda mala jangan lai. Nenti baru jan. En makanyin jako. Allah kimene denga. Pakan jako. Nenti jako. Cici mala jam baru jan apa dikanyin.
Yes, the role of the law, men and women, and in my case, being a woman dealing with senior law women, yeah, my goodness, it's an incredibly important role. Well, a crucially important role. And you know, I myself have been taught a great deal by the older women, and in turn, as I get older, I am a teacher now myself, and it's our responsibility to, as law people ourselves, to make sure that we bring young people up through the ranks so that they can become law people themselves. It's holding on to the law.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so we, our role is to teach young children Inma. Now, Inma is singing and dancing traditional cultural law songs and dances. Yeah, and our culture, because of how we're doing it like this, our culture is surviving and going forward into the future, and we don't want our culture to ever die. Our culture is still really strong.
Next year, when Pulangkita Bajani celebrating Pulangkita in Mako, Jogoring Kojago, Pian Bajuda, Troy Joda, Jar Parangan and Yangan.
And next year we've got plans to hold a big cultural celebration where we will showcase a lot of our cultural heritage, which is for our own people, but we're going to invite other people from around the world, including tourists. So we're going to have a big event next year.
Fantastic.
Mm.
We will all be coming.
Last week, celebrate 35 anniversary opening.
And so we had a little bit of a practice run just last week, because last week was 35 years since we have won back traditional ownership of Uluru-Kata National Park. That was the Uluru and Kata was given back to the traditional owners, and it was 35 years last week, and so we had a little celebration, but it was practice for next year. Dancing and singing.
We've had a message from Lynn Allen, who is the chair of the library at the Portico Library, And she thanks you for the wonderful and inspiring discussion and says, we at the Portico Library pledge to do our utmost to educate all young and not so young about your amazing culture and history. That's it.
Library or bio.
Yeah. Kaya lugar popular yung palun ba. Paano na jong ko la. Wangka ko jong ring la palaning alam ba. Waga wilo.
And I too would like to thank the Portico Library for the opportunity, not just to talk tonight, but for this coming together and sharing our histories and our knowledge and our realities, and how this is moving us all forward. And so thank you for the fantastic opportunity to be involved in that. It's been really great. Yeah, and I've loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And see, there's a couple of other questions here, Helen.
Do you have time for another question, or Linda and
It's up to
Rene?
you. What do you think?
Oh, they've got 2 more questions?
2 more? What can you see, Jane?
Well, one was just a question asking, is there somewhere that we can see more of your artworks, Rene? And I think Helen has said in the chat, but just for anybody who hasn't seen that Helen, you can guide people to see more. Is there a particular starting place to see more work by Rene?
So, yundaba work moranganala. Work kuju dan painting by
Ngayon ko kuwari ba
Janpi by
Janpi banal ba Pulangkita la malukula.
So being working in multimedia, you can see my work at Janpi Desert Weavers. That's TJANPI. Janpi Desert Weavers, because I'm a weaver and a grass sculptor. Walkajara, WALKATJARA, Walkajara Arts for paintings, and Maruku, that's MARUKU, Maruku Arts for what's that off of Janpi, and for wooden carvings. So I work in multimedia. And you do ceramics too? You do ceramics?
Oh, I already been.
Oh, and I used to do ceramics. So
And glass, and glass.
Yeah, plenty of works and aeroplanes.
Oh,
And airplane, yes.
And batik. Yeah, you said Janpi Desert Weavers.
Yeah, I'm putting it into the sidebar there.
Yeah, we'll share the links so people can learn.
Janpi Desert Weavers. That's it. That's it. There's some shops. You can support those online. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And one other question from our librarian, Tom, was, does anybody know of other museums or libraries that have done any exhibitions similar to the one currently at the Portico Library, or something else that people might be interested in?
Oh yeah. On Perth, yeah. Well, yeah. Look, actually, yes. I mean, there's so many. I don't know about libraries, but galleries, art galleries, and museums. Yes, at the moment, we have a big, huge traveling exhibition called Seven Sisters, and I think that's in Perth. You might better go and see that, Helen.
Is that the one? Is that the one that came from the National Gallery from Canberra? Was that in Canberra?
Yeah, the museum. That's in Perth.
Yeah, from the museum. It is coming to the UK next year, I think. So look for that. Look for that. That is a terrific exhibition, and it has wonderful pieces made by the Janpi Desert Weavers.
Oh, did you? Oh, and really saying, and when you go and see the Seven Sisters, they're chased by a man called Wati Nyiru, and I made the man.
Ah, okay.
And I think Anne said that the Seven Sisters who were Otanandi exhibition, which is touring and is in Reims in France right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All over the world.
Next year, I'm 70 exhibition in France.
Oh.
In one another.
Oh, right. So I might be in France next year.
Oh,
The Seven Sisters. Or I'm going to.
well, we hope we can all go.
Let's all meet up there for coffee. Yeah, look, thank you. This has been fantastic. I've loved it being with you all, you know, with us all together. Here we are on the same page.
I know, it's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us and for your heart in the work that you've shared with us. And we've been so privileged to have you started out with the painting, with the photograph. And that was a big story to get the photograph here in the pandemic to Manchester. Angela had to drive it out to you and you had to sign it and get it rolled up and sent to me. It was a big story, but has a very powerful effect, and we really thank you for your work. So I look forward to meeting again. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I don't know if James, if you want to say anything.
Just to echo that from the library. Thanks, everybody, and I hope we'll continue the conversation in future, all of us.
Yeah. So we're going to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.